Hello, and welcome to Crime Fog. In the U.S., there are more than 2 million crime scene investigators or CSIs whose job it is to collect and preserve evidence that can be used in criminal trials. To do this, they follow a series of steps to make sure nothing gets contaminated or tampered with. So let's learn how these real-life CSIs collect evidence. They'll identify potential evidence and hazards and determine the best way to process the scene. This typically involves taking notes and photographs, which helps create a timeline of events and preserves the scene for future reference. It is important that they document everything thoroughly so that the scene can be reconstructed accurately, should the need arise. Overall, the goal of the crime scene documentation stage is to create a comprehensive and detailed record of the scene as it was when first discovered. And to do this, CSIs use a variety of tools and techniques, depending on the type of evidence they're dealing with. Each piece of evidence must be individually wrapped and labeled to ensure its integrity and prevent contamination. Different types of evidence require different packaging materials. For example, a bloody knife would be packaged differently than a strand of hair. Transporting evidence to the forensics lab requires careful planning and execution to ensure the safety and integrity of the evidence, and technologies to analyze the evidence and generate leads or confirm the involvement of a particular suspect. The information they provide can be crucial in helping the prosecution build a strong case against the suspect. From securing the scene to analyzing the evidence, each step is crucial in ensuring that justice is served. These professionals play a vital role in the criminal justice system, and their work is essential in solving crimes and bringing perpetrators to justice. Thank you for watching this episode. I hope you learned something new. If you did, don't forget to give us a like and share with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for more fun science videos. As always, this has been your host. Don't forget to keep on thinking. Some common forensic analyses include DNA testing, fingerprint comparison, ballistics analysis, and toxicology testing. The results of the forensic analysis are then compiled into a report that can be used by law enforcement officials and prosecutors to build a case against a suspect. Several factors must be considered during the transportation process, including the type of evidence, the distance to the lab, and any potential security risks. The transportation method chosen will depend on the specific circumstances of the case. For example, some evidence may be too fragile to be transported in a standard police cruiser, while other evidence may require specialized temperature control during transit. CSIs must also be aware of potential security risks during transportation and take appropriate measures to protect the evidence from theft, damage, or tampering. This may include transporting the evidence in a secure vehicle with armed guards, or using encrypted tracking devices to monitor the location of the evidence during transit. Regardless of the method used, it's important to maintain a secure chain of custody throughout the transportation process. This involves documenting the transfer of evidence from one person to another and ensuring that the evidence is not left unattended or unsecured at any point during transit. Failure to maintain a secure chain of custody could compromise the integrity of the evidence and potentially lead to the dismissal of a case. Therefore, CSIs must follow strict protocols and take all necessary precautions to ensure the safe and secure transportation of evidence to the forensic lab. Typically, evidence is placed in paper bags or boxers to avoid any cross-contamination. If the evidence is liquid or semi-liquid, like blood, it needs to be placed in a sealed vial. Every piece of evidence must be labeled with a unique identifier that includes the time, date, and location of collection, as well as the name of the collector. This helps to establish a chain of custody and ensures that the evidence is admissible in court. Additionally, the packaging and labeling of evidence must comply with strict legal and regulatory requirements to ensure that the evidence is not tampered with or contaminated. CSIs must also be aware of the potential for degradation of certain types of evidence over time and take steps to preserve the evidence properly. Overall, proper packaging and labeling of evidence is essential for the success of a criminal investigation. It ensures that the evidence is handled appropriately, reducing the risk of contamination and preserving the integrity of the evidence. For example, they might use gloves to avoid leaving their own fingerprints behind, or tweezers to carefully pick up small objects. Chain of custody refers to the chronological documentation or paper trail that shows who had possession of the evidence and when. It's important to maintain a clear and unbroken chain of custody for several reasons. Firstly, it helps to ensure that the evidence is not tampered with or contaminated. By tracking who has possession of the evidence at any given time, it's possible to identify any discrepancies or inconsistencies that may indicate tampering. Secondly, maintaining a chain of custody helps to establish the authenticity and reliability of the evidence. If the chain of custody is broken, the admissibility of the evidence in court may be challenged, and the entire investigation could be called into question. Finally, chain of custody procedures help to protect the integrity of the investigation and ensure that the evidence is handled properly. This helps to build public trust in the criminal justice system and ensures that the rights of all parties are protected. Chain of custody is typically maintained through the use of documentation, including written records, photographs, and digital logs. Each person who handles the evidence must be documented along with the date and time of the transfer. This creates a paper trail that can be used to track the evidence from the crime scene to the courtroom. It is crucial for CSIs to follow strict chain of custody procedures to ensure the integrity and reliability of the evidence. Doing so helps to ensure that the evidence is not tampered with, that its authenticity and reliability are established, and that the investigation remains credible. When collecting samples of body fluid like blood or saliva, CSIs use sterile cotton swabs or other absorbent materials to avoid contamination. Additionally, they may use vacuum cleaners with HEPA filters to collect trace evidence, like hair or fibers. Each piece of evidence is collected in a way that preserves its integrity and ensures it can be analyzed effectively. CSIs may also use specialized equipment like fingerprint, dusting kits, or luminol spray to identify and collect certain types of evidence. Fingerprint dusting, for example, uses a fine powder to visualize fingerprints on a surface, while luminol can identify the presence of blood. Once the evidence has been collected, it's carefully packaged and labeled for transport to the laboratory. This may involve placing items in paper bags, boxers, or vials, and attaching a label with information about the time, date, location, and collector of the item. By following these careful procedures, CSIs ensure that the evidence is handled properly and can be used to reconstruct the crime scene and identify those responsible. This documentation serves as a critical tool for investigators as they work to piece together what happened and identify those responsible. The first step is securing the crime scene. Physical evidence can include anything from fingerprints and tire tracks to weapons and surveillance footage. Biological evidence includes body fluids like blood and hair, while trace evidence can encompass a range of materials such as glass, paint chips, and fibers. Sometimes CSIs need to use specialized equipment like UV lights or chemical sprays to identify some substances, like some body fluids and illicit drugs. Once identified, each piece of evidence is carefully collected to be sent to the lab for analysis. Careful attention is paid to not damage or contaminate any evidence. To maintain its integrity, each item is placed in a separate container and labeled clearly for tracking purposes. Once collected, the evidence is transported to a secure facility for processing. Strict protocols are followed to ensure the chain of custody is maintained and the evidence is handled properly. Throughout this process, meticulous attention to detail is required to ensure that every piece of evidence is accounted for and preserved. Any potential contamination is identified and eliminated. Through these efforts, CSIs play a crucial role in gathering the necessary evidence to solve crimes and bring those responsible to justice. They'll also take close-up pictures of any potential evidence to capture minute details. In addition to photography, CSIs will create sketches of the scene and any relevant objects or areas of interest. These sketches often include measurements and other details that help recreate the scene. Written notes are also taken during this stage to record any observations or findings that may not be apparent in the photographs or sketches. For example, the lighting conditions, temperature, and other environmental factors are recorded because they may be relevant later on. Additionally, the CSSL will look for and document any signs of forced entry or any disturbances within the scene that could help determine if there was a struggle or a chase. This involves preventing anyone from entering the area, including curious onlookers and unauthorized personnel, until the investigation is complete. This keeps the scene as pristine as possible and prevents contamination or tampering of any evidence. The police may block off the area with caution tape and establish a safe perimeter to control who enters and exits. This also helps ensure the safety of everyone at the scene, including first responders, investigators, and anyone else who may be present. Once the scene has been secured, CSIs will begin their initial walkthrough. During this time, they'll survey the scene to get an idea of what happened and to develop a plan for further investigation. Next comes crime scene documentation. During this stage, CSIs will take photos of the entire scene from different angles to provide a comprehensive record of what they see. During the documentation stage, CSIs use various tools to identify and preserve evidence, such as cameras, sketchbooks, measuring tapes, and note-taking devices. The next step is identifying the evidence. Locating and identifying any form of physical, biological, or trace evidence is key. After identifying all the pieces of evidence, it's time to collect them. Proper packaging and labeling of evidence is a crucial part of the CSI's job. Maintaining the chain of custody is another important step in evidence handling. Once the evidence has been packaged and labeled, it's time to transport it to the forensics lab. Once the evidence arrives at the lab, it is processed by forensic scientists who use a variety of techniques. Finally, after the forensic analysis is complete, CSIs may be asked to write a report of their findings or even testify in court about their investigation. So there you have it, a step-by-step guide on how crime scene investigators collect evidence.